when the Dravonian armada neared Terra, an air of arrogance filled their ranks. For millennia, they had dominated countless worlds across the galaxy, each possessing its own defenses and technologies, none of which had ever withstood their might. Terra, a small, insignificant planet on the fringe of a trivial solar system, was merely another conquest to add to their long list of triumphs. From the command bridge of the Imperator-class dreadnought, Overlord Varkon, leader of the Dravonian fleet, gazed down at the blue planet. The Terrans had sent frantic pleas for peace, desperate messages offering surrender, but Varkon ignored them. To him, this was nothing more than another routine victory, one requiring little effort. "We'll crush them in mere hours," scoffed Sub-Commander Yelkor, a smirk on his face. "Their primitive rockets and laughable defenses will be erased before they understand what's happening." Varkon chuckled. "Let them fire their weapons," he said dismissively. "It will be amusing to watch their disbelief as their strongest attacks harmlessly bounce off our shields. To us, their missiles are no more than pebbles against a mountain." The Dravonians had no reason to worry. Their energy shields, perfected over thousands of years, had never been breached. Even the most advanced civilizations had failed to overcome them. The crude ballistics of Terra were no more than an inconvenience. As the fleet assumed attack formation, they observed Terra's military forces scrambling into position. Orbital scans revealed outdated jets and armored vehicles being deployed. It was almost laughable. Varkon watched as the first wave of missiles streaked toward them. As expected, the projectiles vaporized upon impact, the explosions dissipating harmlessly against their shields. "Is this the best they can do?" an officer sneered in disappointment. "They are a young species," Varkon replied, unimpressed, barely grasping the concept of space travel, let alone warfare on an interstellar scale. The tactics of Terra were relics of a bygone era, outdated strategies from a time when wars were fought with steel and gunpowder. The Dravonians had long abandoned such primitive methods. Their ships wielded antimatter cannons, plasma lances, and energy shields impervious to conventional attacks. Still, despite his confidence, Varkon had studied the Terrans' history. Their wars, spanning centuries, were brutal, relentless, and marked by sheer determination. That they had survived this long was impressive, if not surprising, given their tendency for self-destruction. Deep beneath Terra's surface, the planet's leaders gathered in an underground war room, watching in horror as their defenses failed. Their most advanced weapons had proven utterly ineffective against the alien invaders. Yet, amid the despair, there was defiance. "Humanity has never surrendered," growled General Ardon, slamming his fist on the table. "We cannot sit by and watch our world be destroyed." "Our missiles are useless," another official muttered. "Our aircraft can't even get close. They're tearing through everything like paper." "Then it's time," Ardon said grimly. "We use Project Nyx." The room fell silent. Nyx, a top-secret weapon developed in hidden research facilities, unknown even to most world leaders, was their last hope. It was built on untested quantum principles and experimental energy physics. If it worked, it might turn the tide. If it failed, Terra was doomed. The Dravonian fleet moved into position, preparing their final assault. From the command ship, Varkon sneered. "This is your last chance, primitive creatures," he growled. "You should have surrendered while you had the opportunity." But as the Dravonians prepared to strike, something stirred beneath Terra's surface. Project Nyx activated. Scientists and engineers worked frantically, directing power from underground reactors across the planet. Entire cities experienced brief blackouts as energy surged into a colossal rail cannon hidden beneath the crust. The hum of power grew deafening. Then, without warning, Nyx fired. A narrow, nearly invisible pulse of energy shot into space. The Dravonians, fixated on their own assault, failed to notice it until it was too late. The pulse struck the lead dreadnought, Unlike previous attacks, it did not dissipate. Instead, it pierced through the shields as if they weren't there, cutting through the hull with surgical precision. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the ship began to break apart. Alarms blared as systems failed. Varkon's smug expression turned to shock and disbelief as his once invincible vessel disintegrated in seconds. The explosion sent shockwaves through the fleet, damaging nearby ships. In the war room, there was an eruption of cautious celebration. Against all odds, Project Nyx had worked. The Dravonians, stunned by the unexpected attack, scrambled to regroup. Their once invulnerable armada was now exposed. "Reform the fleet," barked Commander Zyril, second in command. "Stay beyond the weapon's range. Prepare for a counterattack." On Terra, the rail cannon began its slow recharge. The defenders braced for the inevitable retaliation. They had one last shot, and if they missed, there would be no second chance. The skies darkened as the Dravonian fleet reassembled overhead, preparing to unleash their full fury. The final battle for Terra had begun, but there weren't enough Dravonians left. Their remaining ships scrambled to reorganize, preparing for a devastating counteroffensive. The conventional forces of Terra, hopelessly outmatched, rushed to mount a defense. Yet they all understood the truth. Their real hope lay in waiting. The rail cannon had to fire again. Fighter jets and drones took to the skies, their pilots fully aware of how outgunned and outmaneuvered they were. Still, they fought. Kamikaze drones, missiles, and laser bursts rained down in a desperate attempt to slow the invaders. Ground-based anti-air systems unleashed relentless volleys, searching for even the smallest vulnerability in the Dravonian defenses. But the results were unchanged. The enemy's shields flared brightly, absorbing every assault. Their ships advanced with merciless precision. In the war room, tension gripped the air. The countdown timer for the rail cannon's recharge ticked away, agonizingly slow. Each second stretched into eternity. The Dravonians, however, had no intention of giving Terra more time. Officers watched on their displays as enemy ships intensified power to their primary weapons. Energy signatures spiked, signs of an impending wave of destruction beyond anything Earth had ever witnessed. "They're preparing to strike," an officer muttered grimly. The general, his expression unyielding, responded with calm authority. "We must hold. We cannot let them destroy the rail cannon. Do whatever it takes." Orders were broadcast across every last line of defense. The mission was clear: buy time at all costs. Then the Dravonians fired. Their massive plasma beams tore through the sky, raining destruction on military bases, communication hubs, and the last remaining air defenses. Explosions shook the ground, sending shockwaves rippling through cities below. Fires erupted. Buildings crumbled. The night was ablaze with devastation. Yet, Terra did not surrender. Ground forces kept shooting, even as their fortifications were systematically annihilated. Pilots danced through dogfights, weaving through the chaos, each one fighting against impossible odds. The Dravonians pressed forward, their attacks devastatingly precise. And yet, humanity's defiance slowed them, if only slightly. The last stand on the war room monitors, a Dravonian dreadnought, one of their largest warships, moved directly over the rail cannon. Its superweapon was charging, emitting colossal energy readings. "They're targeting the railgun," a scientist gasped. The general's expression hardened. "We must hold. Do not let them destroy it before it fires." As the Dravonian ship prepared to unleash its wrath, Earth's forces made one final, desperate push. Kamikaze drones, missiles, and every last remaining weapon were hurled at the enemy vessel. Explosions lit up the sky. The Dravonian shields shuddered, absorbing the onslaught. The ship remained intact, its structure barely scratched. But then, a single drone broke through. One last suicide drone, packed with explosives, found a momentary weakness in the shields. It struck the warship's hull, detonating in a blinding flash. The damage was not enough to destroy the ship, but it caused a critical disruption. The enemy cannon misfired. Its shot, meant to obliterate the rail cannon, missed by mere kilometers. In the war room, cheers erupted. The railgun had survived. The Project Nyx countdown reached 0. Engineers held their breath. The final surge of energy pulsed through the weapon's capacitors. Then, with a deafening roar, the railgun fired. A searing bolt of energy cut through the heavens, racing straight toward the largest Dravonian warship. This time, nothing could stop it. The energy pulse pierced straight through the enemy shields, as if they weren't even there. It struck the warship's core, and in an instant, the colossal dreadnought was obliterated. The shockwave rippled through the enemy fleet. For the first time, the Dravonians hesitated. And then, they retreated. The alien ships pulled back, abandoning Terra's orbit. Their conquest was over. In the war room, cheers gave way to stunned silence. Terra had survived. The railgun had worked. The invaders were retreating. But the cost was unimaginable. Entire cities lay in ruins. Smoke rose from the wreckage. The death toll, catastrophic. And yet, one truth stood above all else. Humanity had won. For the first time, Terra had proven itself to the galaxy. It had stood against an enemy far superior in technology and strength, and though the Dravonians had fled, one thing was clear. They would return. The general's voice was steady, but grim. They'll be back. Next time, the Dravonians would not underestimate Terra. Earth's leaders knew what had to be done. The rail cannon had proven its worth, but it was not enough. New defenses, new strategies, new weapons. The next war was coming, and humanity would be ready.